welcome back to my channel. I know that my doll videos have been really popular lately, these fuzzy boys, and I'm really excited to make more of them with you guys very soon. But first, I thought I would do a repaint of an actual doll because I've been really inspired by the videos on YouTube, and I thought, why not try it? So I'm gonna make Eva from the Grey Legs. So Grey Legs here, have a little friend. So I've been watching a lot of these doll videos and I'm so excited to finally do my own. I don't know if I like it, but at least I will try it. I actually picked up this Rapunzel Disney doll a while back just when I finished Grey Legs, so I was prepared to finally do my own doll repainting. And since I watched a lot of these, I kind of already know the steps to do this. I know that I have to remove the face paint with like acetone or nail polish remover, and I didn't want to buy anything new, I didn't want to buy anything expensive, so I just used the one I had on hand. And unfortunately it's not pure acetone, so it was really hard to get the paint off the doll, and at some point I just had to give up and leave the residue of the paint there to just guide me for the face paint, because I could not for the love of me get off the paint. Then I took off a really fancy little dress and I started snipping off the hair little by little. This actually I thought would be the easy part, but getting the hair out was pretty difficult. I did also remove her head to try and remove the plugs from the inside of the head, as a lot of the doll videos do. I wasn't planning on replugging it because I knew I would not have the patience to do that. I knew I was just going to glue on the hair anyway, but I thought I will try removing all the hair, and it took me a good while to get it all off. As a primer and the varnish for the face, I knew I needed to get something in spray form and matte, so I picked this up on Amazon. It was pretty cheap and pretty simple to get, and I know that a lot of people swear by Mr. Super Clear, but I don't have the money or the budget for that, so I just went with this one and it worked fine. For the face up, I went straight in with my Prismacolor color pencils. They're not watercolor pencils, they're just the ones I have, and I just went straight in with black because I am pretty reckless and I have no chill. I sketched out the eye shape, which was pretty simple because the face mold already had creases where the paint had stuck, so I couldn't get that out. And I just pretty much followed that because it was pretty close to the already design of Eva, so why not? With a lighter color of brown, I sketched out the waterline and also the eyebrows just to get the general shape in there because they're pretty dark and I knew I needed to get the shape down before I went any further. To erase any mistakes, I used my little eraser. This one was not any special eraser, I just used it. I think maybe a kneaded eraser might work a lot better for this, but this was what I had on hand. I did feel like she needed a bit more color to her cheeks, so I brought out my really cheap pastels. I think I got all these colors for £5 at Hobbycraft. I can see if I can find it online, and I just used my brush and I brushed on all the pastels around her cheeks. This did take a while to build up because it was very faint. You can barely see it in the footage, it's actually a bit darker in real life, but it did give her a really natural looking blush and I was really happy with it, so of course I just kept going and blushing as much as I could. Also tried to use some of the shavings of one of my color pencils, but that didn't work very well. I kind of just shifted the other pastels that was already on her face, so I will not be doing that again. Then I continued to build up her face. I took quite a vibrant purple color to start out with her eyebrows. They will get darker later when I move in with acrylics, but for now it worked really nicely just to get an undertone and a gradient to her little thick eyebrows. At this point I was actually pretty excited over how well it was going. I wasn't expecting it to go this well this fast, and I knew that I didn't want to do a lot of levels or layers of paints, and it was already looking pretty good. I went over with the same color over her eyelids just to darken them up a little bit. I won't be using any black just to do anything on her face, just because it will be easier with acrylics. Using the same light brown color as I used before, I kind of mark out where her pupils will go. They are just one solid color, and I knew that I wanted her to look off to the side because that's how I usually draw her. And already now she's looking like Eva, which was very exciting. I also used a nice red for her lips, just building those up. They won't change a lot from the ones that Rapunzel had, but they will be a little bit softer and a little bit redder actually. Going in with a black pencil just to outline her lips as well, or mouth. but it wasn't working very well and it was a little bit hard to get in the creases of the face sculpt, but I neatened this up later with acrylics. Then to start off with whitening the white of her eyes, I lifted up some pigment from a white color pencil, and it was pretty cheap. I don't know what brand this is at all, but it did lift really well and created a really nice first layer of white around her pupils. I did also use some of the pastels on her body, even though you won't see most of it. I just thought it would be fun to try it. It does give the plastic a lot more life and I actually really love it. To seal in the powders and the pastels, I used one coat of my sealant and set it to dry. Moving back to the face up, I didn't let it dry very long. I let it dry for like half an hour. It was probably too short, but I am too impatient and I just kept going. It was only one layer of spray, so I hope it will be fine, and it was dry when to the touch. It did make the white pigment of the acrylic kind of move weirdly in the beginning, but that kind of stopped when I started using the other colors, so I think it's fine, and it looked nice in the end anyway. I also mixed up a darker purple color, one that kind of matched a little bit more the yarn that I've been using for her hair, and I started doing her eyebrows. I watered the acrylic out a little bit towards the inner part of the eyebrows, just to fade it out a little bit into the color pencil, and it looked really nice. I did the same thing for the eyes and just darken up from top to bottom, making sure to build it up and make it darker at the top and lighter at the bottom just to give it a bit more of a gradient than just a flat color. Use some more watered down red acrylic just to blush her ears and cheeks a little bit more, but it was not as well done as with the pastels. Give her lips a little bit more of a shape, a little bit more reds. And very carefully I did her eyelashes in a darker purple color just to make it fit with her really dark eyebrows and dark eyes. I darkened up the creases in her mouth and I neatened them up with a sharp knife afterwards just because I wasn't steady enough to be able to do it very neatly without the help of a scraping tool afterwards. EVA also has some freckles on her face here and there, or beauty marks I guess you can call it, so I marked them out in dark pencil or light brown pencil and I darkened them up later with acrylics. I did the same thing I did to her eyes in her nostrils just because I wanted her to have a bit more of a prominent line there because that's how my style looks when I draw her. I did have to scrape away some of the paint though, as I had to do with the mouth because it was too much there and I wasn't neat enough to be able to do it without scraping it away. Adding some white highlights, her face up is complete. Moving on to her hair, I decided to pick up some yarn to make some yarn wefts to go on her head. I knew I didn't want to do rebrooting because I don't have the patience. To create the wefts, I also picked up this round mesh thing to be able to tie them to. I measure out some lengths of yarn. I made them a bit longer than I needed to because I knew it was better to make them long than too short. I cut them and I folded it in half and tied to my mesh thing to be able to create the wefts. I create two of these bundles next to each other and then I unravel each of them, all of them, into little strands. I didn't want to brush them out because I wanted her to have quite curly and thick hair. Look, she's not going to be bald anymore and it fits perfectly. Using some cheap tacky glue, I cut off the wefts and glue it to a plasticky surface to dry. I make sure to use a brush just to make sure that the glue gets into all the little fibers of the yarn because later when I take it off they should be hanging onto one long strip of glue and make it very much easier for me to glue the wefts onto the heads. I made 10 of these and let them dry overnight. I made sure to make too many than too few because I did not know how many I would need to fill out her whole heads. In the end, 10 seemed to be the perfect amount. I carefully peel the wefts of the plasticky surface and trim them so that they will be easier to glue onto the heads. I will be gluing them on with the hot glue gun because I am cheap and easy. For the front of her face, I want to glue the wefts the opposite way so that I can fold them over and the edge will be nice and clean. I actually started gluing them on way too soon, so I had to tear them off afterwards. I just discovered that I needed to paint her base head purple before I actually start gluing on the wefts in case you can see through them. When the acrylic dried, I started gluing on the wefts, starting with the hairline. Eva also had these little flyaway baby hairs around her ears and the top of her head, so I decided to glue them on before I actually started the hairline, just so they looked a little bit more natural. Then I actually found that the glue around the wefts was actually too thick and it didn't work very well around the hairline because it looked bulky and you could just see all the bulky glue underneath. So I ended up trimming the glue part of the wefts completely off and glue the hair directly onto the head, just around the hairline, just to make it a bit neater. For the rest of her head, I just glued the hair wefts directly onto the head in the direction that the bun was going to be, leaving her a little bit of a bald spot just because it was already so much hair and so fluffy, so I didn't need to fill it completely out. Then I gave her a little ponytail using a little elastic band that actually came with the doll, and I was ready to do the clothes. I actually left the creating of the bun for later because I wanted to try on the clothes before I actually styled her hair. So just let me just warn you guys, I am not the best at sewing, I don't have a sewing machine, but I wanted to make the clothes from scratch. So I actually decided I will knit her sweater. Using a little guide that I made, I found out how many rows and how many stitches I needed to knit her little sweater, and I made 1/2. So I will be showing you how I did this because it took me a few tries to actually get it right. I don't know the right knitting terms, so I will just be using my own, and I create 12 loops to start. Knit all of those stitches once again, and when you're at the end you switch hands and you do a purl stitch or knit. Basically means do it the other way around so that your knit will continue to be the right way even when you switch hands. Said I had to learn knitting all over again, and I don't know how to teach you guys, so I'm just quickly going through this. If you want to learn how to knit properly, there's probably a lot of videos on YouTube teaching you how to do it. I do 12 rows of knitting and then it's ready to create the arms. To do the arms, I'm doing it the easiest way, and I'm casting on 12 more stitches onto my needle. 12 was actually too many for my doll, so I had to fold up her arms in the end, so I would recommend maybe around 8 instead of 12. Knit through them all till you get to the other side. Then cast on 12 or 8 more for the other arm. Then knit 8 more rows and you'll be done. Then to connect the two pieces, I made a homemade yarn needle, which is just pretty much a big needle that you can use through yarn, and I connect them by facing the wrong sides together and just knit the edges. You can do this with the wrong side and then turn it inside out, but I didn't, and I thought the stitch was too big anyway and you couldn't really see the connecting parts that well. If I was gonna make this sweater again, I would probably use some pre-knitted fabric or some smaller yarn or some smaller needles. It was just way too big for her and it ended up being too bulky, but she still looks cute, so I just left it. When I came down to the last arm, I just put it on the doll and I stitched the last arms together. It was just easier for me just to make sure that it will actually fit and actually be able to put it on the doll later, and it worked out fine. And her little bulky sweater is done. Moving on to her pants, I got some nice dark jersey fabric that will work perfectly, and I didn't actually use any patterns, which might have been a bad idea, but I kind of had a sense of how to sew pants and I just kind of went with it. As you probably would have noticed by now, I do not know how to make clothes. It's never been a passion of mine to do, but I wanted to try, just to try it, and maybe in the future I can make more. So I started out with making a very simple pattern around one of her legs to kind of mark out where to do the first cut. I copied this 4 times onto the fabric and cut all the shapes out, leaving a little bit of room for the seam. I paired them up right sides together and I sewed the long seam from the bottom of the pants to the side of her hip. As you can see, I do not have a sewing machine, so I had to hand stitch everything, and it was quite tedious, but it wasn't too big, so it was fine. But I'm using a basic back stitch, and I can't really explain it well, so if you want to do it, please look it up. Do that to the other leg as well, and then we're going to stitch on the inside of the leg halfway, almost a little bit more than halfway up. Then sew the 2 pieces together by stitching the right sides towards each other. Fold everything inside out and fold off the bottom of the legs, and the base of the pants is done. To make them into overalls, I create a little square to sew on about her chest and also a little square for her back. After trying the overalls onto the doll, I trimmed the buckles that goes over the shoulders, and I also glued on some pockets and some other little trinkets to make it look more like overalls. But since I didn't have enough care to actually stitch the sides and the edges of the pants, they kind of look a bit rough, but I kind of like it as well. It kind of fits well with the very shabby and bulky sweater. I fit everything onto the doll and then I push on her head again, and ta-da! She is almost done. Let's do some final touches. To create her fluffy messy bun, I just styled it as normal human hair and I twisted it and gathered it into a little bun. Then I took one of the elastic bands that came with the doll and I tied that over the bun. Then I took a string of yarn, the same as I used for the hair, and I just twirled that around the bun just to give it a bit more shape and gather a bit more in the middle. Pretty cute! Eva also had this blue ribbon tied around her waist, so I got some of Hobbycraft and it was pretty cheap, and I just tied it around and cut it. To add some little extra detail, I tie some red and green string to the shoulder straps, and this is something she has in the story because she needs to tell the difference between right and left. And of course she didn't feel quite complete without her little wooden stick sword, so I created that by shaping a wire into the shape of the sword, covering it with Fimo, painting it, and gluing on some paper leaves. Let's add some glossy varnish to her eyes and lips, and the doll is complete! So that was it. That was the whole repaint. I'm not the best at making dolls. I think I'm not as good at sewing, but it was really fun. Like, the best part of it was definitely doing the face up. I'm not very good at sewing, so her clothes is a bit off, but still they fit together, and finally Acrylics have his EVA and they can play along in the garden all day if they want to. But I thought it was pretty fun. It was fun to try. I'm probably not gonna do it again. Maybe I will if you guys pester me enough. But for now, that was my try. Maybe I'll do some new overalls for her at some point, but at least we didn't have to make shoes, so that's good. So yeah guys, that is it for this video. If you do want to read the story about Eva and Greylegs, my book is actually up for sale at hushford.com, so you can actually get the book now for just £10, and the shipping is now calculated correctly so that you won't pay too much if you just get the book or just get a pin or something. But it will really support me, and I really love you guys, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Bye bye! As always, I just want to thank my patrons so much for supporting me. They give me extra support every month and it really helps. You have no idea how much it helps. I will get better at Patreon this month, and if you guys want some extra rewards and extra cool stuff, go check out my Patreon. Thank you guys so much again for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye bye!